We begin with late breaking news that Donald Trump has just announced New York State Attorney General Letitia James is the world's leading cause of autism. I'll have more on this later on this week. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman. Richard Moore, otherwise known as C, just retired as head of Britain's spy agency, MI6. In a farewell speech delivered last week in Istanbul, Turkey, he was inviting British citizens around the world to come be a spy for MI6. Richard Moore, head of MI6, or the outgoing head of MI6, said of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, quote, "He's bitten off more than he can chew." So this is the outgoing head of British intelligence saying Putin relies on the world, believing that he's actually more dangerous than he actually is. But since 2022, when Putin went into Ukraine, his victories have been incremental, winning territory, then losing it. And it should be mentioned that Putin is now relying on troops from North Korea, as the Russians doing the actual fighting are quietly souring on this war. According to some estimates, since the invasion, 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed or injured. It's much like World War I. This invasion has turned into a meat grinder, a war of attrition in a never-ending cycle of territory seized and then lost. C, or Moore, the outgoing head of MI6, said he doesn't think that Putin has the strength to defeat Ukraine, despite Putin thinking that Zelensky would collapse in a matter of months when he launched the invasion. Moore, the head of MI6, the outgoing head of MI6, said Putin is a liar. He lies to the world, he lies to the Russian people, and he lies to himself, meaning Putin's way more vulnerable than he lets on. His silent partner in crime, Donald Trump, also lies to the world, his own people, and of course himself. Trump honestly believed Putin's lies, the initial ones at the beginning of the invasion in 2022. Trump believed Ukraine couldn't stand up to Russia's invading army. As recently as this year, Trump was scolding Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, that you don't have the cards in this fight. You better make a deal with Putin. Give him what he wants. Now, Trump said that for two reasons. One, he wants Putin to win. His supporters want Putin to win because they view Putin as the great white Christian hope who will tame Asia and parts of Europe, who will prevent the marauding hordes of Muslims and non-white Christians from flooding across the European borders. Also, Trump likes winners, and he automatically assumed, given Russia's size and power, that Putin would prevail. And of course, Putin secretly used his own power and money to help Trump get elected. So Trump owes him. Trump doesn't read history and fails to grasp that European leaders do. And they know exactly what Putin wants. If you take nuclear weapons off the table, Putin is outnumbered, seriously outnumbered vis-a-vis NATO and NATO alone. He doesn't have the troops. That's why he's bringing in the North Koreans. He doesn't have the money, and he doesn't have the political will back home to take on all of Europe, Canada, and supposedly the United States. Well, war is a tricky thing, and the unfortunate thing about it is you really don't know how it's going to end until you start fighting it. But raw numbers, and remember, raw numbers are what prevents a lot of wars from ever starting. Raw numbers tell us that Putin lacks the resources to mobilize an army, that he lacks the resources and the political will to take on all, and I do mean all, of Europe. That doesn't mean he isn't scary, because war is scary, which is why you avoid it at all costs. Now, Trump claims he's attempting to avoid war by urging Zelensky to give Putin everything he wants. But that's kind of like ABC thinking back in December that paying Trump $15 million to settle his defamation lawsuit, even though he could have easily been defeated, they thought, well, it'll satisfy the beast. Pay him $15 million. But we now see, and we knew, but we see now with Jimmy Kimmel and Trump's very own FCC chair in direct violation of the First Amendment, threatening ABC's parent company, Disney, that you better fire Kimmel, you better be nice to Trump, otherwise this government will start blocking future Disney acquisitions. Trump wasn't even president in December, and already Disney thought appeasement would work. But Trump sees appeasement as weakness, and so does Putin. Keith Kellogg is a retired general who served as acting national security advisor during the first year of the first Trump administration, right after General Michael Flynn had to quit after it was discovered Flynn had been communicating with the Russians on behalf of Trump during the final weeks of the Obama administration, which is against the law. Kellogg, General Kellogg, is Trump's special peace envoy to Ukraine, and while he's a Trump loyalist, he's also somewhat pragmatic. For example, he was visiting the White House. General Kellogg was visiting the White House on January 6th. And while he was there, he actually sent a message to Trump advising him to call off his insurrectionists. I know that's not much, but in Trump world, that's a profile in courage. Well, in an interview with British newspaper The Telegraph, Kellogg, General Kellogg, now giving a realistic view of Putin that aligns less with Trump and more with Europe. General Kellogg saying Putin is, quote, an expansionist power. General Kellogg said, quote, give Putin an inch, he'll take a mile. He added that Putin wants to reestablish the Russian Empire. Now, again, I keep telling you on this show, all you have to do is listen to what people like Putin say. We fail to listen to their speeches at our own peril. On tomorrow's show, I will talk about Benjamin Netanyahu, what he's actually saying, and what Trump is actually saying about the Middle East. You know, we tend to allow the media to tell us what these people are saying, and the media polishes it. They make it sound better, more palatable, because, well, if it's too frightening, we might stop watching. I'll get to Israel on tomorrow's show. But if the news media actually reported what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying word for word, what his cabinet is saying word for word, the media in the United States would be accused of anti-Semitism by right-wing members of AIPAC and other pro-Netanyahu wings of the Israeli government. I'll get to Israel on tomorrow's show. But remember what Maya Angelou famously said, quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So Netanyahu, his cabinet, Trump, Putin, they're telling you, they told you who they are the first time. Read Mein Kampf. Listen to Trump's own speeches. And this, what I'm about to tell you, applies to all genders across the spectrum. If a man hits you once, he's going to hit you again, no matter what he promises after. Remember what Maya Angelou said. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. After Jeffrey Epstein was busted the first time, his lawyer, Kenneth Starr, yes, Kenneth Starr, the former Whitewater prosecutor, Kenneth Starr famously told his mistress, and yes, Kenneth Starr had a mistress, he said, I'm working for Jeffrey Epstein because, quote, he promises now to keep it above 18. That's what Kenneth Starr told his mistress, who was also a lawyer, about why he's defending Jeffrey Epstein. He said, quote, Jeffrey promised to keep it above 18 from now on, as though molesting, raping girls was a speeding ticket. So, believe Epstein the first time, we know he only got worse after that sweetheart deal. Now, Donald Trump is going to be 80 next year, and with that, believe it or not, comes wisdom. Yes, even Trump is capable of wisdom. In fact, he's stupid, he's immoral, he has a narcissistic personality disorder, and a lot worse, but he's still wise. In his fevered mind, the way to handle Putin right now is to vamp, play for time, say whatever it takes to keep the plate spinning, delay any more arms sales to Ukraine, pretend you want to leave NATO and then pretend you want to stay in NATO, pretend to demand that Putin negotiate with Zelensky, pretend you're frustrated with Putin, and threaten devastating economic sanctions against Russia. Keep threatening, then change the threats, give Putin deadlines to declare a ceasefire, and when those deadlines expire, pretend you never said that. This is, to paraphrase Patrick Moynihan, malignant neglect. That's how he's handling Putin. It's an holistic approach to foreign policy. Don't touch anything. Let things play out and just pretend you're getting involved, get in the motions, pretend. Have Steve Witkoff, a real estate attorney, meet with Putin. Because if you're Trump, who couldn't care less about anyone other than himself, that's a wise move. Over the weekend, as Russia ramps up its air assaults on Ukraine, attacks that have become increasingly voluminous since last month's summit in Alaska, where Trump not so secretly gave Putin everything he wants. Over the weekend, Trump was asked about Russian drones and jet fighters now wandering into European airspace. Now, the first time Trump was asked about Russian drones being shot down over Poland, they didn't get all of them, by the way, Trump said, well, it could have been a mistake. He's always willing to give Putin the benefit of the doubt. And over the weekend, Trump assured reporters that America would help defend any European country that's attacked by Russia. But those are just words, because right now it's the EU scrambling jet fighters, not the United States. Trump doesn't seem too alarmed at Russia poking neighboring countries because, as Trump has repeatedly said to Europe countless times, you guys have way more to worry about than America, since there's a giant ocean that separates us. EU ministers have begun meeting to create, EU defense ministers have begun meeting to create what they call a drone wall in Eastern Europe to shoot down Russian vehicles, air vehicles, wandering into their space. Right now, most military experts in Europe agree it's unsustainable to start using manned jet fighters to take down Russian drones. Russian drones, which cost nothing to assemble and are disposable. There's no question Putin is testing Europe's resolve right now. And what we're seeing is a poker game. He wants to know what kind of hand NATO, the EU, and Trump are holding, and whether Europe is willing to go it alone if Trump stays a good little boy and continues to do what Putin tells him to do. On Friday, 3 Russian MiG fighter jets violated Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. Italian F-35 fighter jets stationed in Estonia, along with Finnish and Swedish pilots, escorted the Russian MiG out of their airspace. In NATO terms, that is what is known as an Article 4 provocation. More than 20 Russian drones entered Polish airspace back on September 9th, damaging a house with no casualties. Polish, NATO, and Dutch jet fighters were able to down 3. United States not doing this. Again, it's why European defense ministers right now are proposing some kind of drone shield for the eastern flank, because Russia has an asymmetrical advantage with their thousands of drones that they can launch into Europe. And right now, Europe is essentially relying on lumbering jet fighters to shoot them down. On September 13th, a Russian drone wandered into Romanian airspace for nearly an hour. 2 Romanian jet fighters tracked the drone and were advised not to shoot it down for fear it would land on civilians who'd be injured by the collateral damages. Again, not American jet fighters. Over this past weekend, 2 German Eurofighter jets were scrambled to intercept a Russian reconnaissance plane flying over international waters along the Baltic Sea. Swedish fighter jets escorted the Russian plane back to Russian airspace with no further incident. Again, United States not getting involved. Meanwhile, Russian airspace is constantly getting violated by Ukrainian drones and missiles. And it's the first time since World War II that Russia, Moscow, has been under attack. By some estimates, 1,000 Ukrainian drones have hit in and around Moscow since the war began. So go back to what the world thought of Putin's military capacity before his ill-advised invasion. And now, what does the world think of Putin's military capacity? I would never beat the war drum against Russia. I wouldn't say it's a cakewalk defeating Putin. But I'm just telling you what the facts are, what cards each player holds. Trump says Putin holds all the cards. That's what he insisted while meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office earlier this year. Is Putin simply too powerful for Ukraine to defeat? Well, that seems to be the consensus among Trump, Pete Hegseth, our defense chief, and our vice president, J.D. Vance. But do they really believe Putin can't? Do they really believe Putin can't be defeated? Or do they not want Putin to be defeated? Ukrainian drones, once again, struck one of Russia's largest oil refineries in the Leningrad region earlier this week, sparking a massive fire. So Trump is really just playing for time on behalf of Putin. Right now, there's a bipartisan bill written by Lindsey Graham to slap 500% tariffs on any country that buys Russian oil. Trump repeatedly threatens to move that bill through Congress and sign it, but it's been languishing in Washington all summer. Now, he spent the past 3 months threatening these massive tariffs, and Russia only gets worse. The more Trump threatens further economic sanctions, the worse Putin gets. So Trump is in a bit of a bind because he keeps threatening these sanctions and he doesn't follow through. So now he's changing his tune, accusing Europe of dragging its feet on economic sanctions. Not me, it's Europe. Really, Donald? Trump now issuing ultimatums to NATO instead of to Russia. He's saying, I will only impose harsher sanctions on Putin when and if all the member nations of NATO stop buying their oil and gas from Russia. Well, like anything with Trump, there's always a germ of truth to what he's saying. Many NATO countries, like Hungary, Slovakia, and Turkey, still purchase some of their fossil fuels from Russia because it's less expensive. Turkey, a member of NATO since 1952, is in fact the third largest buyer of Russian oil, right after China and India. Trump has slapped tariffs on China, but not because of Russia. He also slapped a 50% tariff on India, far less than the 500% tariff that he's threatening anyone purchasing Russian's oil. I mean, if he's going to go nuclear, it's a 500% tariff, not a 50% tariff. And the only reason Trump slapped that 50% tariff on India is because India's leader, Modi, refuses to give Trump credit for that May ceasefire between India and Pakistan in the fighting over Kashmir. Trump is telling the world, I negotiated that ceasefire. Modi, who's as much a fascist as Donald Trump, saying, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. So to punish Modi, he slapped a 50% tariff on India. Had nothing to do with India being the second largest buyer of Russian oil. So Donald Trump is a lunatic. He sees the world through the prism of what's best for Trump and not what's best for America. His supporters buy into his I am the state posturing. They live vicariously through his wins and his losses. And in the end, Trump always loses, bringing everyone down with him. Donald Trump belongs in an insane asylum and or a prison, not inside the Oval Office. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.